If you're anything like me, you've probably wondered what happens inside your computer the moment you press the power button. A lot more goes on than you might think. Your computer wakes up, checks itself, and gets ready to load your operating system. Today, we're going to walk through the boot process step by step. When you turn on the computer, electricity flows into the motherboard. The very first thing that starts running is a tiny program built into the board called BIOS or UEFI. BIOS and UEFI act like the computer's starter kit. They check your hardware, turn on important components, and prepare everything so your operating system, like Windows or Linux, can load. Without BIOS or UEFI, your computer wouldn't know how to start. Next comes a quick but important test called the POST, or Power on Self test. During POST, the computer checks things like the CPU, the RAM, the graphics card, keyboard, and the storage drive. If something's wrong, the computer will either show an error message or make a series of beeps to help you figure out what failed. If anything does fail, the boot process will stop until the problem is fixed. If everything passes, though, the computer moves on to the next step. After POST, BIOS and UEFI loads saved settings, kind of like reading a set of instructions. These include CPU settings, fan and power controls, as well as the boot order. If you want to change these settings, you can press special keys like F2 or delete during startup. Modern UEFI even has a mouse-friendly user interface, making changes easier and faster. Now the computer needs to decide where to look for the operating system. That's where the boot order comes in. Common boot devices include SSDs and HDDs, USB drives, optical drives, and network boot systems like pre-boot execution environment. Once it finds a device with a valid bootloader, it prepares to pass control from the firmware to the operating system software. Finally, once the firmware has done all its checks and everything's safe and working, the system loads the bootloader, and the bootloader loads your operating system. The OS brings in drivers, starts services, prepares your desktop environment, and then your login screen appears. At that moment, the boot process is complete, and your computer is ready for you to use, but there's a couple things to go over first. Because the startup process is so important, modern computers use a feature called Secure Boot to prevent malware from sneaking in before the OS loads. Secure Boot checks that the bootloader is trusted and hasn't been tampered with. If its digital signature doesn't match what the firmware expects, the computer refuses to boot. Many computers also use a TPM chip, or Trusted Platform Module chip, which securely stores encryption keys and helps prove that the boot files are safe. If everything checks out, the OS is allowed to begin loading. But not every startup goes perfectly. Sometimes your computer might show errors like no bootable device found, there might be a black screen with beeps, you can get stuck on the BIOS screen, or it just won't turn on at all. When this happens, a problem might be a loose cable, RAM not being fully seated, a drive not plugged in correctly, incorrect BIOS settings, or even an outdated BIOS version. Technicians often fix these issues by reseating hardware, resetting the BIOS, checking the boot order, or updating the firmware. Once the issue is solved, the computer can continue to boot normally. And closing out, we've got a quick little flowchart here that just goes over the entire process we just mentioned. Power comes on, UEFI activates, power on self-test, it runs its check. If everything's good, BIOS initializes hardware and finds a boot device. Bootloader loads the operating system, hands the control over, and then you are presented with the login screen. And that's the boot process.